Hello and welcome to Broken Entertainment. So, I picked up this comic, published by Image, but it's actually done by people they're calling themselves Ghost Machine. They're effectively an independent comic creator group. They all own these characters and this IP, and then they have Image publish it. And one of them is Jeff Johns. There's a lot of very good artists that are involved in this as well. And I picked it up randomly at the store, and it's fantastic. It's just great. I mean, I picked it up because of this cover. I mean, look at this. This cover is great. I love all three of these characters' designs, really, but these two are what really grabbed my attention when I saw it on the shelf. Really interesting designs, and it's not a superhero comic per se. Although all these people have powers and abilities, they're not. It's not really superhero type stuff. It's more of a science fiction, science fantasy kind of genre. Really a different take without being a deconstructionist take, put it that way. So Ghost Machine 1 is a preview comic. It has samples of each of the different settings and some of the characters that they use. It then tells you what book you can go find them out in. And they've just come out with some of these books. Some of the other ones haven't come out yet. I don't want to go over every page, but I definitely want to show you some of this. The other thing is, it really ties in to all the discussion around the Rippaverse and Isom, because this book basically sets out to do the exact same thing Isom number 1 and number 2 set out to do. They set out to introduce a universe with unique characters and storylines, and roll you into a world that had a whole bunch of different characters. Ghost Machine's doing exactly the same thing. The difference is, Ghost Machine does everything right that Isom does wrong. And it's not that I want to pick on Isom or the Rippaverse in particular, but I want to show how independent creators can make stuff and do it the right way. Do it in a way that gets attention versus cheap stuff that's kind of pumped out with all this stuff floating around Isom. If you're not familiar with it, Isom has a lot of art questions involved where there's potential 3D assets just literally copy and pasted into the book. And it tries to take on too much. It tries to show you too much while also telling a story that it also fades away from. So it's kind of this mess that never quite achieves any of what it set out to do. Ghost Machine doesn't have that problem. And while I support independent creators and initially supported the Rippaverse when it came out, there's a lot of stuff with the Rippaverse that doesn't sit well with me. One of those being these cards that we're going to go over, these character cards, for $100. And that kind of thing. Look, independent creators can't already have enough people going, oh, you're just garbage. It's just a grift. It's just this and that. It's not good enough to be published. That's why you're self-publishing. And then you have somebody creating something as an independent creator, and it looks like they're taking advantage of people. And it looks like they don't care about the product. And it looks like the art and the storytelling is not important to them, but the money is. That turns people away. You're not going to see them show up on a sheet. You're not going to see them on Twitter. You're not going to see them on YouTube. They're just going to not buy it. So I think it's an interesting comparison, because this book deserves a lot of attention. This book is very good. Now, Ghost Machine, January 1. This book is a preview book. It shows you different little stories from each of the characters, and then it tells you what comic you can find them in that are coming out at the same time. So, but each story that it's showing you is not a partial story. It's complete within itself. And you get these different glimpses of the different universes within Ghost Machine and of the different characters. And a lot of them are really compelling. Some of them, maybe they're just not my thing. But most of them, to me, look very interesting. I'm absolutely going to go out and buy some of these comics. Let's get into, first of all, this cover is great. I love this cover. I love these three characters are three of the bigger characters that are in Ghost Machine. Okay. So here you have Direwolf, and she's only in her story briefly because it's actually the story of Rook, who is in the same setting and kind of counter to and in conflict with Direwolf, but not necessarily. It's not a villain versus good guy kind of dichotomy. It's they're competing against each other. They have different ideas and different beliefs going in what they should be doing, but they're not. It's not Superman versus Lex Luthor. This over here is Geiger. He's a radioactive guy. He's already had some comics. I think he might be a little bit older than the rest of this setting, or the rest of this comic universe, rather. So he's really interesting to me as well, and we'll show his part. And then Redcoat over here is a guy that ends up being immortal and finds out the hard way in 1776. And then he's kind of a scoundrel kind of guy, and he's a lot of fun to read. Each of them has a distinct, not just appearance, but a distinct voice. And it's one of the things that's really missing in Isom. And it's one of the things that's really missing, you'll see in the Isom cards. Because again, this is why I'm doing this. Both of these books do cards. Both of them. In the same format. One of them charges, one of them doesn't. But if you bring up, I'm going to switch to one of their cards now. Okay, so we got Direwolf here. First of all, the art on these cards is really good. It's the same quality that you're seeing in the rest of the book. And I like that they have the full front version of the character, but you also get this profile shot in the background, and one of her wolves and her weapon and everything. So you get the full visual of the character. This is a design that I really enjoy. Okay, so you get Warden of Cadence Lupus, wolves, be it age, height, weight. First appearance, Ghost Machine #1, which is this book. History: little is known about Direwolf's life on Earth before transferring to the Kepler system and working for a better world as a warden. What's evident is that she has a background as a behavioral ecologist and was part of the core team who designed the helmets that control the various animal species imported onto Exodus. Initially, during Rook's training, Direwolf and Rook became close. However, the relationship soured over disagreements on what to do after the world engine failed and the corporation did not return for it. Abilities: Direwolf communicates and controls a loyal and fierce pack of wolves, all of which have grown to abnormal sizes like most of the predators on Exodus. Her skills as both behavior ecologist and warden technician make Direwolf one of the most knowledgeable and experienced wardens in existence. You get her abilities without giving a whole bunch away. Okay, it doesn't just go through like a textbook. You know immediately what she does and what her background is and what she's capable of. And in her background story, it leaves plenty of room to explore. It leaves some mystery about her original origins, but it tells you where this character is coming from, and that's great. The problem you get with the document cards is that none of that happens. Okay, so first of all, the art on these cards, you get this tiny postage stamp little picture of the character. You get the same name, height, weight. And for him, it says this man is one of the most intriguing subjects, because these are all being written by this guy down here in the corner document. This is one of the most intriguing subjects I've been keeping tabs on. Though he is from the city, he currently lives in Shadow Valley on his own ranch that has many workers. He is clearly an accept, but I've not quite figured out the origin of his powers. The suit he wore has a symbol on the waistband that seems to change colors, but I don't quite know what it means. There was a moment not too long ago where it looked like he retired his attire and decided to no longer favor the life of fighting criminals in Forest Park. Is he back? It's hard to tell, but his abilities have grown unlike anything I've seen before. If this keeps up, he will be one of the most powerful beings on this planet. You see this a lot. I'm not going to go through every document card, but you see this a lot in those cards of, oh, well, if this guy does blank, he's one of the biggest threats. It's like everybody's going to be the most powerful thing on the planet if they put a little bit more effort into it, basically. Our observation: I do not know what his powers actually are. What I do know is that he's very strong and has only gotten stronger. Now, in Ghost Machine, you have this third-person limited perspective. It's not really coming from any specific voice. It's just observational. They could have done it as a profile or something, but they just wanted to get you the information. Documan really could have actually gone beyond what Ghost Machine and I'm sure other comics have done, because here you have these cards written from the perspective of this, like, cosmic level being that's supposed to be a potential big, huge threat looming over the setting. He doesn't come across as intelligent. He doesn't come across as otherworldly. The voice in here is of some guy that just has notes on these excerpts that he's seen on the street. You know, he knows almost nothing about them. This thing, you learn very little. Okay, you don't even really learn his background other than he works on a ranch and he's no longer active and his abilities have grown. But you don't know what his abilities are. He never actually tells you what they are. And that's one of the criticisms of Isom in general. You don't know what none of these cards tell you what anybody's abilities are. And that's where Ghost Machine is really, this gives you enough information to go off of and to be excited by the character, but not so much information that they can't conceal stuff and can't bring it up, as a surprise later on in the comics. Whereas as these cards are trying to do that, but they're trying to do it in a way by just not showing you anything. And it's like, well, what's the purpose of the cards? And then you find out what people paid for them. And you're like, this is when I really started to have a problem. Because I wanted to review their books and then let them be. But that feels like theft, right? You sell these for $100, 11 cards for $100, and they don't tell you anything. They barely have art on them. Not to say that I would pay $100 for these either, but at least there's something to it. And this is where indies have to really elevate themselves above the crowd, because that's how you get noticed. Now, Isom got noticed in other ways. And that's great. Happy for him. For everybody else, that's how you get noticed, by being a higher quality, by being a step above. Not everybody, but just the low. There's a lot of low tier out there, right? By being high quality, you get attention. Ghost Machine has really good art. It has good storytelling, and it's not charging you an arm and a leg. So it's easier to see it. So these, I really like these. I like that they're in the book. They're in each section. I mentioned that this book's split into sections. They're in each section. And they do a really good job of getting you excited about the character without giving you too much. So then we'll take a look at one of the stories here. I don't want to go through everything and get in trouble that way. So right away, first page, you immediately have the setting character down. They're all outside, like just outside, and they're wearing anti-radiation suits. Like, if you gotta wear anti-radiation suits to go outside and sit around a campfire, you live on a messed up world. And interestingly too is, see, this one's decorated. So these kids have these decorated ones, and so they're living in these suits so much that they're decorating them. And you learned so much just from this one picture. And so what you have is this older guy telling stories about Geiger to these kids. And I'm going to skip down to, I think, the best part of this. He's being pursued by this guy. He's being pursued by these couple of guys. And he immediately disables two of them. And you see immediately his abilities, right? He's immediately glowing with radiation, which is this really cool look from a colors perspective. I really like the way they did it. And then his two-headed wolf here. And they fight. It's brief. He wins. And you get this real close-up of his skull face, which is scary, and you can see this guy's absolutely terrified. The other guys in suits run off, and you can see this used to be a playground. So one of the things this does very well that, again, you see struggles with in Isom is the backgrounds are not just there. They're interesting, and they tell you a lot about the setting. Yes, it's a playground. It's an abandoned playground surrounded by ruins with people in radiation suits. That tells you a lot already. And it says he will walk across America to find a cure because he's trying to become human again, killing a lot of people along the way. But don't worry, most of them are bad. So he's got this guy down on the ground. Okay, talk, but if you don't like what I say, my dog takes your throat. Sorry, I meant wolf. He's a wolf. Now about this cure. So he says there's another person out there that are a living nuclear reactor like you, but now they want to be human again, or now they're human again. How? I don't know. And he starts to just walk off. So you get this personality of this guy that's like, okay, I'm going to beat the tar out of people that get in my way, but this guy doesn't seem too bad, so I'm just going to leave him alone. And he wants this information, but he's not getting it. So he's frustrated. He goes to walk off, and the guy follows him. And this is where you learn so much about the character on this next page. If you help me, I'll help you find him, and you can ask. I'm valuable, I have information. Doesn't sound like it. About the queen, then. She put a price on your head. Did you know that? All the crime lords have. There are soldiers hunting you for what you did at NORAD. I can help. That immediately makes me go, what the heck did this guy do at NORAD? I can help you stay a step ahead of them all. There are a lot of people coming for you. So this guy's hunted. This face, this expression is amazing because you immediately get the sense of how this character's feeling about all. He's like, I do not care. Let them come. And he seems maybe a little crazy. My family is dead. Now I have nothing stopping me from being the monster that they say I am. You understand, this guy does not care. He doesn't care about people hunting him. He doesn't care about people trying to help him. He just wants his cure because he has lost everything. He's a guy with nothing to lose. He's lost his humanity. He's lost his family. And maybe a little bit of his sanity along the way. And he's just filled with anger. So in this one short story, you know this character's character, for lack of a better term, and you're immediately drawn in. I want to know what this guy does. I want to see what happens next. And that is how you do the setup that Isom was going for. Isom was set up to create and introduce a universe. It was supposed to introduce a whole bunch of characters and a universe and a background as much as it was to introduce just Avery. It doesn't quite do any of those things. You briefly encounter some characters that you learn almost nothing about, and it's in this kind of disjointed way that doesn't work because it's trying to blend all these different things into the story just to show them to you. That doesn't really make them a part of the story. Whereas in this, you have it split up. And I really like the way they did it. They have it split up into a bunch of different little stories. Each one is self-contained. Each one gives you a feel for the character and a hook to be interested in them and what's going to happen next. And I think it's a great way, if you're trying to introduce a bunch of stuff at once, it's a great way to do it because it immediately goes at the end of each one, and then the next comic is coming out in, whatever month. So, you pick up this book, you go, let me thumb through this. Oh, this is really interesting looking. Look at this art. This looks really good. Look at the way these people interact. Look at these cards. I know about the characters without having to try to figure it out going into this little story. The story gets me interested and hooked on the character, and then you tell me where to go and find more. I think it's the way to do that kind of thing. Now, personally, I would go a different way. I wouldn't do a book that is sole purpose meant to just introduce me to a bunch of stuff. I just release them, but I do understand why they did it, and I think it works because of the way they did it. When you try to make one big story and just throw elements into it to show them off, it's disjointed. It doesn't work. You get, okay, here's Alpha Core. Why is Alpha Core in here? I don't know. They're not really part of the story. They don't do much, and then they're gone. Here's Yaira. Why is Yaira here? I don't know. She fights Isom for a minute, and then she's gone. It's clearly there just to say, hey, look at these things, but you don't... It breaks up the story rather than being a self-contained... you could have had a little Alpha Core story and a little with Yaira involved, and you could have had an Avery story, and you could have had... I forget the name of the rock star guys at the end. But it ends up being disjointed. This book does very well. They're compartmentalized. They're in their own setting. They're in their own little story. And I immediately, at the end of this guy says, but some of them are as dangerous as you, President Griffin. And I'm like, there's a superpowered president. Cool. The electrician. All right. And the Redcoat. And then he goes, who the hell is Redcoat? A great response for a character like this. I love that. And then, what's the next story? Redcoat. This is a great way to introduce the next story. And they don't all do that. But, so this thing I didn't notice on Redcoat before. I wasn't going to go into too much of these other stories, because I just wanted to cover a little bit about why I think this book works so well. But look at this art. I love this art. But it introduces some other characters. I didn't notice that up here. Where he's talking about people he's met before. And you have Einstein extorting him to learn about magic. That's pretty cool. So the Northerner is another character that's in this book. I like that Benedict Arnold is another immortal. So there's other immortals that's interesting. Then a guy gets randomly shot by Annie Oakley. But the really interesting thing for me in this shot is here you have him fighting. He's surrounded by enemies. You have George Washington, who looks like he's summoning lightning and channeling it into his sword. So there's some messed up stuff going on in this universe, and it's one of those things, like one shot. You gave me one shot, and I want to know more. Now, there's more to it than this. There's a couple more pages, but really, really interesting story, and the one that I'm really interested in the most is Rook. And it's in part because, and we already kind of went over, so I won't go through the story, but look at how huge this tiger is. I love the character designs in this setting. This helmet is so cool. This helmet, look at this close up of this helmet. So this is the one I really want to follow. There's several others that I want to follow next. I'm interested in Redcoat. I'm interested in Geiger. I'm super interested in Rook and Direwolf because their designs are really, really interesting. The world, look at this. The world is really cool. These tanks. Here's Direwolf right here. This is really the only shot you get of her in this story. But Rook number 1 coming out. Look at this bear. Holy cow. It's the size of a tank. Look at these. Anyway, Ghost Machine is a really good, looks like a really interesting universe. I'm going to get Rook, I'm going to get Redcoat, and I'm going to get Geiger. And I might get, there's one in here about an angel and a devil child that get swapped. They have to swap families. That's kind of a different concept, so I'll probably get that one too, just to give it a shot. There's different art styles too in all of these. Let me show you here. And this is about a family from the future that has to go back in time to hide. So this is a more like classical comic art style. So there's different art styles, there's just different writing styles, there's different characters. There's something for everybody in this, I think. Highly recommend you pick up Ghost Machine number 1 and just look through these, see what you're going to be interested in. And then you can order them through your local store. You can go online and get them. But they really did something the right way that I think Rippaverse was trying to do. Went ahead and pulled up the Hornsby and Halo, which is the 2 kids that are swapped at birth. One of them is a devil, one of them is a angel. And it kind of goes into, okay, well, nature versus nurture. Who's going to end up, will the angel end up still good? Will the devil end up still evil? And I was looking at their card, and I noticed they mixed all the characters into this one card, which is kind of interesting. Because they also put the pets in there. So you got, Rose Hornsby, height 12, height. So the two heights here is they have a angel form and a demon form, and then they have a human form. Height 12 versus height 5'1", weight 98, eyes, etc. Then you have birth name Tucker, breed Australian Labradoodle, age 5024. So I'm gonna guess that's not a normal dog. And the same with the cat, 7,467. I just thought that was funny. It's nature versus nurture. As the age-old battle of good and evil, it's as simple as who speaks louder, the angel on Rose's shoulder or the demon on Zachary's, as the turbulence of adolescence comes crashing down on the two teenagers who have no idea just who and what they truly are yet. That says abilities unknown until they hit puberty. So this is the only one where it doesn't really tell you their abilities. But you can kind of guess. It's an angel and a demon. Even in their short story, you get sort of a hint at what they're capable of. She she throws a pitch and it's so fast this guy gets knocked on his butt. And then when he hits the ball, when he pitches, she hits the ball, and you can see his eye change here, and her eye changes here, and you see this energy coming up on her hands, and then she hits it, and he has to basically fly, and he catches the ball, and it's smoking. So I just thought that's a really interesting way to display some powers in a short story. Even though they don't tell you what they are on the card, they show you kind of what these two are capable of. And then the shadow play here is fun too. And I just think that's really an interesting way of doing it. And it's a little bit different even than their other short stories, which is what I like about Ghost Machine. There's a lot of variety. And she's frustrated with him, but then he's not getting a ride home because he wasn't perfect, essentially. And she still offers him a ride home. So it's kind of showing you this dynamic between the two characters. It shows you a little bit of what they're capable of. And it shows you that, maybe the angel is not in the best situation, and the devil is in a situation where she's maybe being pulled around in a different direction. I think that's really cool. This whole book was really awesome. There weren't any of the stories I didn't really like. Some of them weren't really my style, but they were well done. And they immediately came out with 3 or 4 different comics to read, all of which I have on order. There's going to be reviews on those as well. And we'll leave the Isom comparison after that. I just thought, since these two books were doing exactly the same thing, it was kind of an interesting connection of they're both introducing universes, they're both introducing a bunch of characters. One of them gets it done in a way that's really compelling and interesting, and one of them does it in a way that really detracts from its story and really kind of stumbles around and has issues with pacing and has issues with exposition. Sometimes it doesn't reveal enough when it tells you it's going to reveal a bunch, namely in the cards, and the art is inconsistent and doesn't look anywhere near this quality. So you have these two books doing exactly the same thing, and one of them just does it in a way that the other one, that Isom, should have done it. I think if you did Isom this way and changed nothing else, I think you have fewer people come away from it being like, what the heck, man? I think there's a real possibility that if you had structured it this way, then it's like, okay, well, I got a short story about AlphaCore, I got a short story about Yaira, I got a short story about Isom, I want to see what's going on with these characters now. In this book, I picked it up because of the cover art, and I was just looking for something different. And then I read through it, and I'm like, okay, I immediately want to buy Rook, I want to buy Geiger, and I want to buy Redcoat, and I'm interested in Hornsby. Right away. It sold 3 books, possibly a 4th, and I have nothing but good things to say about the art. I have nothing but good things to say about the writing, because it's short, it's concise, it focuses on its characters, and gives you a taste of what they are like as people, what they're capable of doing, in terms of powers. It gives you a little bit of action. In this one it's a sports game. In the other ones it's not. There's fighting, there's running, all that fun stuff. There's somebody, trying to interrogate somebody. So it's what I wish Isom had done. Because I'm not out here like, oh, we gotta tear down the Rippaverse. There are things that it has done that I think are really questionable. Those cards are one of them. And seeing these cards, which do the same thing but more. I mean, imagine if those Isom cards had that kind of graphics, or that kind of art on it. I'm really curious how all this came about. I know that a lot of these are people who left DC that were really good at DC, but you don't see any DC connection. I think that's great too, because you see this book that is doing different things. These are different stories. They're not, oh well, this is Superman, but he's super duper man or anything like that. They're totally different. They stand out on their own. There's nothing like Rook out right now. There's nothing like Redcoat out right now. There's nothing like Geiger out right now. And hopefully the quality continues and the interesting stuff continues, because that's what we need right now. We need indies, we need indie adjacents, and yes, we need mainstream that are good, because the whole industry needs to do well for everybody else to do well. And while you want indies to present alternatives and a different way of doing things than the mainstream, you also want the mainstream. I would rather, there's a lot of people that say, oh, mainstream comics needs to die, mainstream Hollywood needs to die, so that indie can take its place. Indie's not going to take its place. It's not. There's always going to be a mainstream, and I'd rather have that mainstream be good and drawing attention, and then people go, oh, I want more. I want to see more. So they look around, they see indies, they go, well, what's this have to? What that's different than what I'm getting over here? And you sell more books that way. If you have a sick mainstream, like we do now, then it's harder. As much as you say, oh, well, people are looking for different alternatives because of the way mainstream is, and they might not otherwise, you've also got a lot of people that just aren't looking at all, because they picked up a book one time and it wasn't very good, and they went, well, if this is what comics is, I'm not interested, or they switched over to manga, and you've lost them for everybody. That's why I like the high quality stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you've read this book, I'd really like hearing from you on that as well. And if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing and ring the bell for notifications, and I will see you next time.